Grok 4.
Grok 4.
Grok 4.
Grok 4.
The Grok 4 release here. This is the smartest AI in the world.
It's inevitable that these AI tools keep emerging, with the next one always claiming to be better than the last. And with this revolution, I think it's important that I at least start to think about how I'm going to use the most up-to-date models. That's why I want to take this video to explain how I'm going to use Grok 4 in the upcoming semester. And if you find any value out of this video, then perhaps you can implement some pieces throughout the video into your own study habits. And this is educational content only, and these views are only my own. With that said, if anyone else finds any more effective ways to use these tools, I'm all ears. Please let me know. And with that said, I'm going to break this video up into three main parts: conceptual understanding, technical understanding, and what not to do. I think what I meant to say here was that you go to lecture and then you vaguely understand what was said, but there isn't an actual way to test for understanding of the material in the lecture itself. And then the homework seems to be application based. But before I start to apply, I feel like I need to fully understand what was said. And obviously this is different for different classes, but I'm more or less thinking in broad terms. But I think that in classes where there isn't homework, like immunology last semester, there wasn't an opportunity to really actively think about the lectures. So in this case scenario, what I would definitely not do is upload the lecture slides right into Grok, because that is against the Cornell policy. But what I would do is take my own thoughts from the lectures and put that into Grok. And then I would prompt Grok to give me increasingly hard questions. So I would start with multiple choice questions that were a little bit easier, just to make sure I understand the fundamentals, and then maybe move into select all that apply questions, or just harder multiple choice questions. You can just ask Grok to do this if you just prompt it. And that's more like the active recall portion of what I do. But in an ideal world where I actually do implement spaced repetition, I would implement the missed questions into one big set in Anki, where I have all of the missed questions from each of the lectures, where I can then space out the testing of these questions and put all of the questions from every single class into the same deck, so then I can implement some interleaving. I've heard that is also a good strategy. And now that I think about it, this is probably better for classes like biology, where you're more or less tested on the exact contents of the lecture. But for classes like physics and math, I think that building the technical understanding, which I'll get to next, might be a little bit more important. But I might implement the ratios might be different. So for a class like immunology, it might be 80% conceptual and 20% technical, which I'll get to, and then it might be flip-flopped for a class like physics. And then in terms of using Grok for technical understanding, I think of this as just grinding practice problems once I have the ideas that are laid out in lecture down. And this is more like what I'm going to be tested on. So the broad idea of homework is just to give you this sort of practice for the tests. But what I would not do is implement the graded homeworks into Grok and have it create more practice problems, just like the style of the professor at Cornell, because that is banned. I don't know how it is at other universities. At Cornell, you're not allowed to implement the contents of the Cornell in chat, because assumingly the LLMs are then trained on that data, which I don't think Cornell wants. Again, I think it's most important that you adhere to the policies of the university, so then you don't get absolutely fried by some sort of policy. And the same idea for spaced repetition applies for the conceptual understanding. It's more or less just placing the missed questions into one big Anki deck and interleaving all of these subjects in a randomized order. And then over time, you are able to master these kinds of questions that you've been missing just in time for the test. And then as for some of the common pitfalls, I'm not exactly sure on what the arguments against LLMs and Grok are, But I think the broad idea is that they fear that it's going to replace thinking as opposed to enhancing it, as I see. So I think the biggest pitfall is using Grok to think for you rather than to enhance your thinking, as I've outlined in this video. I would use it to prompt my thinking even more. And I think that it could be a slippery slope, because you might psych yourself into thinking that you know more than you do if you just read over the question and then read over an answer, and not actually coming to that conclusion yourself. And then you're just like missing out on all of learning, all of the active recall. That is what's known as passive recall, just like rereading over the textbook or rereading some of the lecture slides. It's not actually active because you're not thinking for yourself. And I think that is where you really need to position Grok in order to best suit needs as a student. And I would like to sit here and claim that I do more spaced repetition than I actually do. It's more like just learning the content as I go, ideally, and then reviewing ideally a little bit before the prelim. I think there's a scheduling feature out for chat. I don't know if there's one for Grok, but if this allows one to schedule spaced repetition, then I feel like that would be pretty helpful. I haven't actually explored this, because I feel like one of the biggest resistance points in terms of actually doing spaced repetition is actually having to think through how much I know and then spacing out accordingly. It's just like I could just be I don't actually know. I feel like I'm not going to see as much returns on my learning if I do that, as opposed to just like spending that time actually just doing practice problems. And basically the whole video is just about using Grok to enhance your own thinking, to enhance your own active recall, and to enhance spaced repetition, as opposed to letting it do the thinking for you. And you can just use Grok to get more of that. And then this is not like exclusive to like what Grok can provide, but I think splitting up the ratios in terms of what you spend your time doing, and then using Grok to enhance that is what I'm more or less getting at in this video, if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. I'm not even sure if it makes sense to myself, but I'd have to spend more time thinking about it in order to like say it coherently and stuff. But it was like my third time filming this video, and I don't feel like filming it again. That's what I've noticed for these videos. It's just so much better to sit here and talk how I normally would, rather than trying to memorize a script and such and say back to the camera, because then I just get frustrated when I like make mistakes and stuff. It's so much better to just sit here and ramble, and hopefully people piece together some of the ideas. Well, I think that is all I really have to say for this video. If you are at this point, which I'm surprised if you are, but if you are, then you can find this video to learn more about why I carry a pocket journal, and then you look at this video to understand what my reading list may look like for the rest of the year.